Hey everyone, this is Jason. I want to make a video about Fidel Castro, Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and Barack Obama. And Americans' general ignorance concerning Cuba. First of all, the reason Cuba is the boogeyman of our hemisphere and has become the symbol of everything that's wrong with the world. First of all, they're communists, and second of all, the reason that has been done is because of the business interests in America. American business interests hate labor. If you haven't figured that out yet, if you haven't gotten that clue yet from your diminishing social services, your lack of health care at work, companies moving into China and other places to get cheaper labor, if you haven't figured all of that out yet, then you're not paying attention. And that's why Cuba is so hated. Because Cuba is the workers' paradise, so to speak. Now, Cuba has its problems, sure. Like every country has its problems. No country's perfect. But Cuba has been misrepresented in America by the business interests because they don't want Americans communist. They don't want the Communist Party. They don't want socialism. They don't even want FDR's New Deal. They've been trying to destroy that. That's as left-wing as they're willing to go. And business has convinced you that it's government that's your problem, not them. Not the ones that or outsource and take your jobs and steal your future away from your children and everything is for profit. Not them. They're not the problem. The problem is government. And that's what all Cuba had nationalized sugar companies. They seized people's plantations, removed gambling interests from Havana, kicked out the mob, kicked out American business interests, and brought communism and socialism to his country. Whether you like Fidel Castro or not, it doesn't really matter. It more matters what Fidel Castro actually did and what Castro was actually for. He was for the worker. He and Che Guevara, this is the thing you have to remember about Cuba. The lasting memory of Cuba, and really the symbol that Cuba is to Latin America and Central America and South America cannot be overstated. He gave the global South, he gave South America, Central America, he gave the Latin countries an alternative to America. He said, look, you don't have to be like America. You don't have to take what American corporations shovel down your throat. You don't have to be exploited. You don't have to be treated the way America treats you. You don't have to. And here's an alternative. Communism is for the workers. Should be painfully evident to every American. Unfortunately, a lot of American workers have been propagandized so badly that they don't even understand what they're fighting against. Also, to this extent, I'm amazed at one of the lasting memories, one of the lasting enduring, whatever you want to call it, qualities, programs, the things that we were left with from Castro is the fight for 15. And you're like, what do you mean that fight for 15? Well, the fight for 15, of course, is the $15 hour minimum wage. And workers at McDonald's and all over the country have been, and if you've been watching mainstream news, you haven't seen this, they've been picketing and striking. And a lot of these workers, the predominant workers that started this, were immigrants from other countries, from Latin America particularly, some from Asia, but predominantly from the South. And they on left radio and left talk shows, they're talking to these people, and they're all Latin. They come to this country, take the worst, shittiest jobs possible, which is McDonald's. Then they get there, they realize that the economic inequality is ridiculous because they're from another country that may be more socialist, maybe more honest about the relationship between business and labor. And they convince the other yokels that are from America to actually get off their asses and be politically minded. Say to them, stick up for your rights as a worker. Stick up, do this, do that, etc. And these people, that's the indelible fucking mark that Castro has left on the world. It's people from other countries come into this country and are willing to fight for socialism, are willing to fight for fairness in the workplace, are willing to go against the capitalist structure. Americans aren't so willing to do that. Americans don't really do that very much. Americans weren't going out in massive numbers that worked at, you didn't see a lot of white people out there picketing or black people or Americans in general before a lot of these immigrants came in and said, no, you're being screwed over. They're making tons of money. We have nothing to lose. We're already poor. What do we have to lose? And the Fight for 15 has been led largely by South American, Central American people who are very familiar with communism, very familiar with socialism, very familiar with Castro and Che Guevara, and it has given them an option. It's given them a way to do things, which I think is the correct way for the worker. America is a great place and it's perfect and the media is great if you're rich. If you're Donald Trump, this place is wonderful. But rich people are psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, they're nuts, and a lot of them want to make themselves invulnerable by becoming rich, meaning they don't have to ask anybody for help. They don't have to lower themselves. They can always they always have, they can take care of themselves, quote unquote. So they don't. So they want an invulnerability to themselves. But when you do that, you lose your empathy, your sympathy, your compassion. You isolate yourself from other human beings. So you don't relate to anyone, but people in your class, and to your own self-interest. Anyway, and that was the opposite of what Che Guevara and Castro brought to the world, and particularly to Cuba. Also. This thing about Barack, and I'll leave you with this. Barack Obama released a tweet recently about Castro, and he said his tweet was, kind of political and garbage that Barack Obama does. And it said something about we value the human rights of all people, meaning that Castro violated his human rights of people. Now, first of all, every single government that's ever existed violates the human rights of people. But America, an American president who has a black site, who has a torture site in Cuba, because he can't do it in America because it's illegal. So he is actually, this president, Obama, has continued, when he said he was running 8 years ago, told us he was going to close Guantanamo. But Guantanamo Bay is still open, and it exists primarily to torture people, to torture suspected terrorists. And Obama has the temerity, the balls, the unmitigated gall to actually say that we should value everyone's human rights, implying that Castro was a human rights violator, while the Obama administration, the military-industrial complex, America, has a torture facility in Cuba because they can't do it in America because torture is illegal here. That is insane. I mean, that's America, though, isn't it, 101? America lives in myths. America lives in fantasies. America lives in contradictions. America doesn't really know what's going on in the rest of the world or even in its own country. They don't know what's going on in business. They don't know what's going on in the military. They don't know what's going on in their school system. They don't have any idea of history. They don't know why there's fluoride in their water. They don't have any fucking idea. And then when they do start to search for answers, guess who swallows them whole? The alternative right wing. Alex Jones and his conspiracies, which he mixes, David Icke, people like that who mix truth and then mix in a bunch of bullshit to negate their truth, get you off into some other bullshit, some rabbit hole that has nothing to do with your well-being, your actual reality. So, and that's a digression. So when I hear all these people talk about how bad Castro was and what a horrible person he was, it mainly comes from the business interests in this country, people that want to be rich and people that have been propagandized to. Castro's legacy is he opposed America since the late 1950s and only relinquished power through death. He was an inspiration to Latin America, Central America. He's an inspiration to me. He was an inspiration to people on the left. He's an inspiration to the workers of this country, to socialists. He's a real-to-life, God-honest revolutionary. Castro put his ass on the line, got guns, overthrew his tyrannous government that was supported by the United States, and risked his own life. Killed people in the process. Put his ass on the fucking line. I love hearing all these right-wingers who wouldn't so much as fucking, who don't even tell you how you can effectively politically organize to make your life better. What they do is they give you these platitudes and talk about, Alex Jones in 1776 and he likes singing Confederate songs and talking about going and taking over the government. But meanwhile, they would never do it. But Castro, Che Guevara, who had the fucking balls to do it. Che Guevara, by the way, was killed by the CIA. Had the fucking balls. Castro survived 300 assassination attempts. I mean, the very same people that were trying to kill Castro actually succeeded in killing Kennedy, but couldn't kill Castro. I mean, that's a conspiracy theory, but it's nevertheless, go look up your history. It's true. It's just ironic to me. This guy was a real to life revolutionary who changed the system. He should be somebody that we all look up to. He should be taught about. We should make him an example of the good things and instead he's a human rights violator because he's a communist, because he wouldn't allow American business interests to take over his country and destroy it like it's destroyed America. It didn't destroy America because America had no history of the left before it. Cuba actually had a history of the left before Batista and had a history of socialism, not socialism, but of kind of more of an egalitarian society and more of a socialistic society. So it understood when Castro came in what was going on. The revolution will come from the right here because America has no history of the left. And that's very dangerous because the right wing is what? Fascist. So you vote for the alternative, you want something different, and Donald Trump pops up, and you vote for him, and he's the fascist arm of change. He's the right wing. And Americans in the Midwest are more comfortable with that because they're worried about guns, and they're worried about gays, and they're worried about Muslims, and they're worried about the big wall in Mexico. And they're not paying attention to the corporations that are screwing them over. And they've wholeheartedly swallowed that single payer healthcare is communist and bad, that liberals are bad. After 9/11, the word liberal it was synonymous with Al-Qaeda. It was synonymous with, people are starting to recapture the word liberal a little bit, but it was literally, you were a pedophile if you were a liberal. And that's what this country, and by the way, you get what you pay for, stupids. No fucking excuses. No excuses. You get what you pay for. I'm railing against people that probably aren't even listening to this video because most people that are subscribed to my channel or listen to my videos are open-minded and they know they know some history and they actually understand what's going on in the world. But these people who loved Reaganomics and loved Ronald fucking Reagan because he was such a good speaker and so eloquent. And they loved what his war on drugs did because essentially it just rousted the inner cities and put black people in jail. And they loved Clinton's fucking war against poverty, or war against black people and incarcerating more black people, and his cutting of social services and welfare and propping up businesses and corporations, and the stock market flourished and people's 401k. White America, middle America love that shit. George Bush, they love those tax cuts. They love the idea of blaming the other. Instead of blaming, the other is the corporation that's fucking lying to you and stealing from you. The other is the military-industrial complex who's doing the same in your name with your tax dollars, torturing people all over the world, including Cuba. That's, and for Americans to not even, look at how Americans view Castro compared to the rest of the world, how South America views, the people that border our own country, the people that are our neighbors, have a completely different version of Castro than we do. Ours is based on propaganda, theirs is based on truth. So, next time you hear that Castro was a human rights violator, just point out that America has a detention site in the very country, Cuba, that they're talking about. And the only reason, and they actually torture people there, and the only reason they do it there is because if they do it in America, it'd be illegal. So they have to do it in another country, and they do it forcibly by the military. They will, meaning that if the Cuba doesn't have the military to muster up to fight this base that's in Cuba, so they have to just suffer through it. And that's a fact. That's the truth about Fidel Castro. Not all this other bullshit that you're being fed. Just ignore that shit. Let it wash over you, and understand that it's coming from the business element of this country who is deathly terrified of the word nationalization, deathly terrified of the word socialism or anything, communism particularly, anything that even is remotely close to being good for workers and labor. This country wants no part of. And the workers and the laborers in this country are the ones that help support that. They believe that they're someday going to be millionaires. They believe that someday they're going to be rich. They believe that someday they're going to be right where Donald Trump is. They're just one good idea away. They're just one invention away. They're just they're just a bag of money on the side of the road away. That's Americans. And they're ignorant and foolish and stupid, and they don't know shit, and they particularly don't know shit about Fidel Castro. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.